Sriram-san on IndoJapanPulse Impact Series.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I look forward to talking to you. My mother tongue is Telugu, but my forefathers from both my mother's side and father's side, they have all lived in Tamil Nadu for a very, very long time. But I have never lived in Tamil Nadu or in Andhra. I was brought up in Delhi. So I went to a Tamil school in Delhi, and then I went to engineering school in Karnataka, the Regional Engineering College, or now I think it's called NIT. And then I came back to Delhi, and this is 1985, and I worked in a hardware company for 4 years. Then I went to Ahmedabad, 89 to 91, finished my MBA. Then I moved to Bangalore and worked for another Indian company for about 6 years before I came to Japan. Well, it was my second job. My first job was after my engineering. So in 1985 was the time when analog was giving way to digital, and I was a hardware engineer for ICIM, which was a subsidiary of ICL UK. So I used to spend my time repairing computers, printers, all of that. You know, very fondly my customers would say, "Mechanic aa gaya," right? And then after my MBA, I joined another company, but I wanted to move away from the technical side, the hardware side, and I was very fortunate to join Wipro, which was just starting up a printer business. And I was part of that printer business team. And that was my first introduction to Japan because the technical collaboration partner was from Japan. So I came to Japan for the first time in 91, and on a business trip. And then I came again in 95. And you must remember, I was much younger, much more foolish, and probably far more idealistic. And my thinking when I came to Japan and I saw this country for the first time, I was very fascinated. How can a country which was totally devastated in the Second World War come out in a span of 40 years and create such fantastic products and a living standard for its people, which is so very different than India. And I used to think for myself, I work equally hard. Okay, I'm not the most smartest, but I am not the most stupid either, right? And we have enough smart people in our country. We all work very hard. Why are we not able to create this? Was a thought that was always at the back of my mind. But it was never a driving force or a driving thought, so to speak. Then in 1995, I came again. In 96, through a very strange set of coincidences, almost like a Bollywood movie. I had no plans of moving. I had no plans of coming to Japan, nothing. So if you know that time, that was the time when India had just liberalized.
Yes.
A lot of multinationals were coming in, and everybody wanted experienced people. And you know, we must give credit to companies like Wipro because they were first homegrown, one of the first large homegrown companies. So it was a great hunting ground for people to take experienced folks from. And I had a client, and he left his job and started a headhunting firm, and he would keep calling me every day. And I used to tell him, boss, I don't want to change. I'm perfectly happy where I am. I'm doing well, and I don't want to really move. Then he kept on calling me, and just to put him off, I said, you know what, my next job should be overseas, and that too in Japan, thinking that he will never find anything for me. And those were the days of pagers, not cell phones. Next morning, 6:30, my pager beeps, saying, you promised there's an opportunity in Japan, you should go meet that company. And that company was Infosys. So this is 96, May, June sometime. Then I met the founders, and I thought that was very interesting, what they were trying to do. And I said, why not? Let me take a chance, go try it for 2-3 years, maybe make some money, come back. I'm still here, so you know what that means, right? I still haven't made money. So then I came, and then, I started Infosys here, and it kind of worked out well, thanks to everybody's blessings and, cooperation. It went well, and I did that almost for 20 years. In 97, when I started the business here, the hypothesis was that, everybody is working on this year 2000 problem. Japan should be no different. There has to be an opportunity because customers in Japan would also need to remediate their systems for year 2000. And year 2000 is more a technical, fix than a business fix, because it is the same business process. It's only you got to fix it in a programming sense. So it is highly amenable to the global delivery model, where you can take the code, remediate in India, bring it back. Japanese is required because this is Japan, but I think we all thought, or we underestimated the degree of preparedness you need to do business here from the Indian side. And this is more, not because I think it was more because we just didn't have the experience of this place. Rationally speaking, if you can do an activity A in one place, you should be able to do the same thing for another place, right? But I think, at least I was totally unprepared for the degree of preparation you need to get started. A, we did not have any Japanese, including me. I just barely had survival Japanese skills. I was the only person in Infosys Japan. We had a joint venture as well at that time, started by Omae Kenichi, the McKinsey consultant. And that was another parallel operation. But as far as the Infosys direct operation was concerned, I am the only guy, and it was very, very hard. But I also realized that you cannot say that this country is X, Y, Z, and why would they not do business, because that doesn't help. They are who they are. This country is what it is. So I think the first decision I made was, if I have to be here and do the business, I must learn Japanese in full earnestness, and to a degree where you can really have a meaningful business conversation. So I spent my first year learning Japanese like a maniac, because I really wanted to get that monkey off my shoulder. And Japan was always focused on quality of an order of magnitude which is very different. And I think many of us misunderstand quality as a output quality, as in the quality of the final output that comes out. I always give this example. Let's say you have to go from here to Singapore. You have 15 different airlines that you can take. all of them do the same function. That is, carry you and your bags from Tokyo to Singapore. There is no difference. However, there are certain airlines that you would always go and use because the experience is absolutely different. The check-in experience is different, the baggage experience is different, the in-flight experience is different, the food is different, how they treat you is different. And it's not because you're flying business class. And I'm saying even in the same class. I think that is a thing you have to learn from this place. Because the way I think this country looks at quality is, if you cannot control the process, there is no way you can control the output. And therefore, the entire experience of creating an output from the beginning till the end is all part of that quality journey. And because of my prior exposure to Japan, however limited it was, I kind of had a sense for it. And I said, look, there is no point in asking somebody here who is not the most fluent in English trying to do business with me, because it is such an overhead for that person. And remember, they have no compelling reason to do business with us. Right? The client has no compelling reason to give business to a new company that is not even Japanese, that is just set up in Japan, which barely speaks Japanese. So it took me a while, but I realized that there are still opportunities available. And by the blessings of everybody, I could get some business going at the end of the first year. That gave me a lot of confidence. And I am super grateful to our leaders, including the founders in Infosys, for giving me the opportunity to, 9-12 months is a long runway. It takes time to build a business, but they still had faith, they had confidence, they could give me the support that I wanted. And once you start the first one, I think it gives you a tremendous amount of confidence that it can be done. But that's how the journey started.
Great.
And remember, we are a service business.
Yes.
We are not a product business. It's not like I can say, look at this pen, you can do whatever you want with it. If you quality process, you buy it. That's not the model. You're in a services business where every interaction with the client is a moment of truth.
True. That's true.
And all that adds to your quality scorecard. You tell a guy you're there at 9 o'clock, but you come at 9:15, okay, that's a minus. You tell somebody I'll give you a document on Monday, the implicit expectation here is they will get it on Monday morning, whereas the way we work is Monday is still not over, it is close of business for us. Minor, but it all adds or subtracts depending on where you are on the spectrum. I have some experience of doing business in Europe, particularly continental Europe, in Germany. It doesn't matter which market you go to. I am yet to find a customer who says, you can deliver bad quality whenever you want, at whatever price you want. There is no such customer, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, as a company, as a person representing the company, we have made a commitment to deliver XYZ on ABC terms and conditions. I think it is our job to meet it or exceed it. And in the process, you have to be very clear that you are still doing it in a manner where the customer does not see this as a punishment exercise. Customer says, oh, these are great guys to work with. They understand what I want. They work really towards my goals and not towards their goals. And I have the confidence that what comes out will make a meaningful difference to my business. I think if we can absorb some of these insights and put it in our work, regular life, I think we can make a significant difference. That's my belief. So first is obviously America was the place everybody wanted to go to. Nobody wants to come here at that time. And the general perception was, oh, in Japan everybody works so hard, you have to work 20 hours a day, you don't get vegetarian food, nobody speaks English, there is no Indian community, why should I do it? On the other hand, US was still seen as an easy place to do business with. And there is a little far more understanding of the US perhaps than understanding of Japan. So that's the first problem. The second problem is, to do business here, you need people who can speak Japanese, who can converse with, and do business in a Japanese way. Right? I always say that this is a very high-touch business society. What you can do with a phone call in any other society would perhaps need a face-to-face meeting here. So you just got to accept it, right? Now that has an implication because you're not used to that and you'll think this is an unnecessary overhead, and if you don't accept it, there's so much stress that gets built up in the system. So my real challenge was, how do I motivate my own colleagues to learn Japanese, to come here, do business? And remember, I am the guy in the market representing the company to the customer and representing the customer within my company. That's my real job. Now, people coming from the company, they have no compulsive need to, love Japan, right? I made a choice, so I can do it because that's what I want to do. But if I get a person who doesn't want to do it, it's very hard to force after a point. And I think that's where we did something very different, very unique. We actually got a bunch of people who kind of volunteered, and we invested in teaching them Japanese in Japan for 6 months full time at the cost of the company. So we created this immersion program. Then we also did another thing, which is a reverse immersion, where we hired young Japanese people and sent them to India, and so that they can understand how and why the company does things the way it does. Because nobody is a fool. Everybody is trying to behave rationally. But if you don't understand why, then it is very difficult to appreciate and work with whatever constraints, whatever decisions that are made. I think that really worked out well for us from a delivery capability standpoint. We also did another thing, and I was always asking myself this question: so why should a Japanese client buy from us? There's Fujitsu, there's NEC, there's IBM, there's Hitachi, there's everybody. Why should they even look at trying a new vendor? And the first response would be cost. But there I learned a very important lesson about how Japan looks at cost. They look at cost over a very long period of time. It is not about cost of this one project or this one transaction. And the kind of questions they ask as part of their due diligence, I think it's a very, very insightful. They look at what's your productivity, because your per unit cost may be very low, but if your productivity is terrible, your total cost is actually going to be higher. And for them, the total cost is also the cost that they have to incur on their side to manage, etc., etc., etc. So when I looked at it, and partly because of the timing, what I realized was there is always a gap in Japan around emerging areas. And ERP was just beginning at that time. And it had already picked up steam in the Western world, and Japan was looking at ERP, and we were just building our ERP practice. And I said, let me try this theory, because there are no experienced people in ERP in Japan. And if somebody wants to do this, they have to get people who've done this before from outside. And fortunately for me, I think I just kind of got lucky, and there is a great company and which is looking at a partner for ERP. We started very, very small, but I think even today that relationship exists, and it's a very successful relationship based on what we did at that time. And I think that first success was absolutely crucial. It gave confidence to everybody, including the client. This can be done, right? So I think it is just that. So I think if I had to put it in one word, yeah, sure, this is a market which is different, but then so are all markets.
Right. Maybe
Right? So you go from Tokyo to Osaka, people in Kansai will tell you, oh, let me tell you, this is Kansai, this is very different. Oh, really? And we are trying to convince our people that Japan is very different. Right? You go to Hokkaido, they'll say, no, it's very different. So I think some of this is overplayed. Sometimes this is used as an excuse. I think you need to figure out where do you delayer it, how do you delayer it, so that you figure out which is the excuse part and which is the real part.
Right.
And that takes perseverance and time. So I have two answers to that. And remember, the timing is very different. It's not now. When I joined the company, it was a $26 million company. It's not like now.
Okay.
It is also a very strongly founder-driven company at that time. So it was very easy for me to just talk to a few people and understand, do they really want to do this or not? And I am so grateful to Mr. Murthy, because he was a big, and he still is a big fan of Japan. He always used to say, we must learn from these people. There is no reason why India cannot replicate this if we put our minds and hearts to it. I think from the company's point of view, if you want to be a global company, and if you're not in Japan, you can't call yourself global at that time. I think part of it was that. Now, reality is quite simply, this is hard. There is no running away from it.
Exactly.
Number two, you have to do things differently if you want to make a difference here. You cannot say what works A, B, C, D, E should also work in F, because unfortunately it won't. Right? Now, my advice to people, a lot of services, small, medium-sized companies call me and say, what should we do? And I tell them, don't do it. If you are not ready for 10 years.
Okay.
This is not like, today's fashion is Chinese collar, so let me go buy a shirt. Right? It is not that. This is, do you have a real commitment to your client in this market for the long term? If not, don't do it, because you will actually hurt more
Right. Then creating.
by starting something and not doing it properly.
Okay.
So it is perfectly okay not to do it. Because nobody is forcing anybody to do business here. Correct? But if you want to do, then you have to come with your eyes open that this place is not going to be a repetition of your success model done elsewhere. And historically, there are enough data points to show that. Oracle, when it came here, was the only market where they did business through partners. Everywhere else, they had a direct sales channel. Well, that's because their founder, who was also a lover of Japan, and he understood that it won't work. And he made that choice. But a lot of companies will say, no, this is our standard process. Why are we changing it for market X? It won't work. And I keep repeating this mantra, it is services. The perception of value of the service and quality of service is defined in every interaction. And there is a very strong cultural subtext to that. What I value in a geography A may be very different than what you value in a geography B. You can keep debating whether it's right or wrong, but the reality is that's what it is. Now, the point is, can you recraft your model and still meet what the market thinks is value while retaining whatever is your strength? I'll give you a very simple example, because all of you are from IT business. Our model is, you create a document, send it to the customer for review. And you send a 100-page document, nobody's going to review. And later on, you assume that they have approved or agreed. You build something, it turns out to be something totally different than what they want. You can say, I sent you this mail on that day, this was a 100-page document, I know I have a read receipt. You go through that, but the point is, that is not what the customer wanted.
Exactly.
And I've gone through my share of, horror stories. I realized that we still can find a way where I don't violate the basic global delivery model premise, but yet can do it in a manner where the customer can see it in a manner they want to see it. So then you start building wireframe, you start building prototypes, you show it. You don't take reverse sign-off as a default operating construct.
Right.
You go talk to the customer saying, look, I want to make sure that I've got this right. And I'm going to explain this to you.
Yes.
You don't review, but I will take you through this document and I want you to tell me X, Y, Z. Now that's going to take more time, but I think it is better to spend that time than struggle with a totally different conversation much later in the life cycle of the project. So, I'm sorry, this is a very long answer.
It's okay, perfectly fine.
But the point I'm making is, we have to make those choices understanding very clearly that what is the definition of value in this market could be very different than definition of value elsewhere. I remember, I think it was my second project, and we were negotiating the deal, and I'm telling the client, you know what, let me deliver this 3 months before due date. Can I get more money as a bonus? The client said, no. I am very clear. I want this on February 28th, not one day before, not one day later. Because if you give it to me one day before, I have no use for it. Because my next activity around this stuff that you're going to deliver starts on March 1st. So you can give it, but I'm not going to do anything with it. Because my master schedule does not have a place to compress for you. Now, you will say, oh, what is wrong with these people? Why would they deny an early delivery? Because there is also this underlying business construct which says speed is important. You can debate it, but the fact is the customer doesn't want it. So you say, can I make sure that I deliver on February 28th morning, not close of business India, a high quality product that the customer can use or do whatever they want to do with it on March 1st. But I think it takes a lot of effort to understand this.
Yeah.
Because this is not a superficial how to do business in Japan thing where you read a book and kind of say, oh, they are very quality conscious. Yeah, sure. What does that really mean?
Yeah.
For example, we are not very comfortable representing things visually. It doesn't come very naturally to us. Whereas Japanese people have been trained from childhood, and their culture is also such, where one A3 picture can tell you the whole story. We are not used to it. So I remember running a workshop for my people. So I called an illustrator and I said, let me teach my people how to think visually. Right? So it is a very interesting 2.5-day course.
Right.
So how do you capture this document in a picture? I'll tell you, there are people who really found it very stressful. They say, why? Can't they read? And I used to tell them, no, they're asking, can't you draw?
They're expecting.
Right? They're saying, can't you draw?
Yeah. Hitome de wakaru.
So I think, so some of this we have to really internalize and see how do you make it part of your default process model for this country. It takes a lot of effort, but I could have the benefit of that runway at that time.
Yeah.
If you start today, maybe it is not possible, I don't know. That's why I always keep saying, if people want to do business here, they are really commit for the long term.
Yes.
Otherwise they should not do it.
I agree.
Or they should have a product which is very clear. Because then you buy after due diligence, comparison, end of story.
Understood.
They know before, they know after.
Sure.
But services is not like that,
Yes. That's
right? So I think, yeah, so it's not easy. So I would think the immersion programs is really important. I would think having a dedicated Japan delivery at that time really helped. The global delivery model, you need people on both sides to work in tandem. I think that really worked. I also think that our focus on very selected areas helped. For example, we started with manufacturing companies. The rationale being they are probably the most global among the large Japanese companies. At least that was theory.
That is the perception. Yes.
But they are, to be honest, they are. Because they've all done businesses elsewhere, they have factories elsewhere, they have markets elsewhere. And that combined with this combination of a new emerging technology area like ERP kind of worked well for us. In fact, I did not choose to expand to other verticals for a very long time. Because my view was your bottleneck is always the capacity that you have that understands this place. You cannot take more work than that capacity can handle. So my focus is always on increasing this capacity in the market that understands both sides. Because it's not as simple as saying, oh, I need people who know Japanese. Yeah, sure, but if they don't speak English well, they can't work with India. Okay, they are great bilingual, but they don't understand IT. Okay, so what do I do with them? So it's a very difficult, I used to call this as the Pentagon model. You need people who know IT, Japanese, English, who know customers' vertical or domain, and who are experienced. There are no supermen. You have to create them on your own, and that's a long, expensive process. But once you have a few supermen, it is possible to figure out how to do with 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 by using technology, by using process models which are very different, right? So, but it's a very long journey.
Yeah.
The point is, it's a very, very long journey. And if you want a non-linear kind of a growth, then you have to also have non-linear kind of interventions in the market. You can't have linear kind of intervention and expect non-linear output. That won't happen. And that's a big problem because as companies become bigger, it is not easy to create a model which is very different than what the rest of the company works with. Right? But that's part of the evolution of the company, I guess. And it kind of helped for me because I was one of the early people. So I always knew all the pieces. Right? So I knew all the pieces because in some sense I've done everything myself at one point in time. In fact, I remember sitting on the network myself in my office.
Oh, great.
Right? So, but that's part of the learning. But the question really is the company and the local leadership committed to that extent? I think that is really the most important question to answer. See, for me, it was not just a job. For me, it was about proving to myself how good am I in such a totally different, alien environment. Can I really succeed or not? Right? And for me, it was just like my own, thing. Could I have gone to the US? Sure. Could I have gone elsewhere? Yes. But I chose not to. Right? That was entirely up to me. Somebody can argue, oh, you lost so much because of that. Maybe I don't know. But I am always grateful for this opportunity, and I think it's turned out okay, at least for me. When I came here in '97, if I would get into a taxi and talk to a driver in Japanese, and if he's a chatty driver, he'll say, where are you from? You say, you're from India. And then he'll say, okay, so which Indian restaurant do you work in? Because that was the universe associated with India. Or are you working in a jewelry company in Okashmachi? That was the universe. And I don't want people in the jewelry industry or the food industry to get me wrong. But I think it has taken us so long, where today if you get in and speak Japanese, chances are the taxi driver will say, oh, you're from the IT industry? Atamaga ine. IndoJapan ine. I think that is the contribution of people who worked in that phase of 15, 20 years.
True.
In many ways, I think now the ground is set for people to exploit this perception that India, and reality, that India is capable IT country. So that's on one side. On the other side, let's look at what's happening in Japan. Very clearly, Japan has a demographic challenge. There are not enough young people. Not only that, there is another issue, and that is, now every industry is actually an IT industry. Because you cannot build a car if you don't have IT people in your team. That was not the case 25 years ago. You need somebody who understood mechanical engineering, who understood material, whatever, but electronics was not in the game. Programming was not in the scene. But today, the best-in-class young people in Tokyo, in Japan, Japanese people, would they work with an SI firm or would they work with an automobile maker who is using AI, ML and creating mobility as a service? They will go there.
Absolutely.
Now, for other users, getting capable talent is a huge, huge issue. It's real. So this is the other perspective. Let's look at what's happening in technology. Everything has gone cloud. Everything can be delivered as a service. It is possible to run a company technically without having an IT shop inside the company, because almost every business process is available as an on-demand cloud service. Okay? And I'm obviously generalizing this, oversimplifying this. There are complications, but that's happened. Today, nobody builds a CRM system from scratch, for example. Now let's look at what's happening in India. India has built on the success of IT services industry to create a whole set of entrepreneurs who are building products and platforms which was not possible to imagine earlier. Take a company like Zoho. I mean, they built such a fantastic platform, right? You look at the startup ecosystem, everybody is building a platform for something or the other. And there are a number of companies in the B2B space as well. Now, when you put all this together, very clearly there's an opportunity. Because if I have a good cloud service that I can deliver well, Japan can use it. The question though is, do I have the mindset to look at how Japan looks at value in that service? That may be a little different. For example, if you say that I have a service XYZ where I'm using optical character recognition to recognize printed matter, I will digitalize it and run an automation, whatever. Everywhere else it may be taken at face value. Japan would probably be the only country which will say, how do I ensure that every single character recognized is accurate? Is there a verification process which is part manual or otherwise? Now, you cannot turn around and say, what is wrong with these people? The rest of the world is using it, why are they not using it? They won't use it, if that's your view. But are you willing to come, listen to the customer, work with somebody to figure out what this is? You can absolutely build a successful business. I think because unlike the pure play IT services model, today you have something to show which works.
Absolutely.
Now you can focus on the differences. Oh no, our payroll, this is a different way. This is not how we do it. Payroll is probably not a good example. It is probably the most complex in Japan, right? But the point I'm making is, it is possible.
Okay.
Correct? And let me also go one step further. Maybe you want to do Japan 10 years from now. But to do that, you want to start servicing Japanese overseas companies today so that you learn. And 10 years later, you will be ready. The question is, as a founder of that startup, are you willing to look that far or not? And I'm not saying which is right. I am saying today we have a fantastic, confluence of factors which can actually enable our product platform services companies to succeed in Japan. Because Japanese capital is now going to India. A lot of VCs are there. A lot of other money is going into India. because they all want to find out which is the next big thing that's happening. I think it is in our interest as Indian people or as an Indian business to look at this and see what do we want to do with Japan. Now you can say, I don't want to do it. That's also fine. You can say, I really want to do it. And I'm going to take a 10-year view of this. But my only request is, don't take a half-hearted view of Japan. Either you do it properly or don't do it. There is nothing like I'll come, I'll try for 6 months, if there is no deal, I'll go back.
Doesn't work like that.
It won't happen. You will not get a deal for 2 years. It's the mindset with which you should come.
Right.
So I was taught by a Japanese gentleman. We do not, as a business, our business style does not spend enough time educating the client. So you may have something totally fancy, but the client doesn't understand it. So you spend time educating the client. We think it's a waste of time, because we think it is part of some pre-sale cycle where it is on-site money. I think that's all a very limited way of looking at it.
Exactly.
Correct?
Exactly.
I think you have to look at it as, can I get the core anchor customers 2 or 3 by investing in this education? Let's say I am an AI platform company. Everybody is, but right? And let's say I'm solving a very, very typical problem, which is very unique, and it's a very focused thing. Let's say I'm trying to figure out how AI can analyze skin texture for cosmetic companies, right? I have data sets which are very large. In India, you can get large data sets. Now I want to take this to a Japanese client. I should be willing to invest that education plus co-creation time to get it to a point where they will say, yes, now this is what we want to give to our customers. But are we willing to do that is a very important question. And you can't do that remote. You probably need to work with a partner here or have somebody who is saying, okay, this is going to be my life mission. I want to do this. I want to see how hard can this be.
Right.
Like an idiot who did this 20 years ago, right? And then do it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it may happen, may not happen.
Yeah.
Or you make it so big in the US that it will automatically come here, which is also fine. There's nothing wrong with that strategy. So to summarize, don't come here half-hearted. It will take time. I'll go one step further. It is not even how beneficial it is for the customer. It is how beneficial it is for the customer's customer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Depending on
Yes.
what the
Yes.
product or the service is, right?
Right.
So I think it's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't think we have still cracked the code.
Yes.
But I would think there is enough critical mass of knowledge available among existing people here today, which was not there when I came,
Sure.
right? And I keep telling people who call me, I can tell you what not to do, for sure. I'm not able to tell you what to do, but I can absolutely tell you what not to do. But that critical mass of know-how is already available. So now it's a question of how, entrepreneurs or next generation companies want to leverage and build on it.
Yeah.
I would like to add one other point, which I find very kind of disappointing. I think there is so much to learn from here. I don't think we've learned enough as a system. As individuals, we may have learned, but as institutional knowledge, I think we could have done so much more, is my sense. Because I think the focus on process, the focus on customer, the focus on, meeting commitments, the focus on, it's all there in our work model right now, but it is not at a level where Japan would automatically be comfortable. Right? I really wish that people here transmit that piece step by step to whoever comes here or whoever wants to work with Japan, right? And go one by one.
Yeah.
I think, for example, we don't have the patience for details. Actually, it takes only 10 more minutes, but we won't do it. We are not used to it.
Yes.
In our system of what is important, it may not be important. But we have to just respect the fact that it is important here. So I'm now doing two things. So I advise a couple of large Japanese companies around what they should do going forward. And a lot of it is around how do you deal with this digital world, how do you deal with so much changing with technology. So that's one part. The other part I do is I support a bunch of startups. Some don't make money yet for me, some give me some money, but mostly it is really about helping them with whatever they want vis-a-vis Japan to the extent I can.
Okay.
So those are the two things I'm working on. So my company is called Co-Create.
Co-Create.
And I'm happy to help whoever needs help to the extent I can. So that's what is keeping me busy.
Thank you.
I'm also
Yes.
president of TI Japan. So TI is the largest NPO that supports startups in the world. So it was originally the Indus Entrepreneur, started by people like Colonel Reiki in the Silicon Valley. So we have a chapter in Japan. So I am heading that since January of this year, which is essentially a small bunch of folks who really want to help entrepreneurs. So it's a completely voluntary organization, and we give our time and our money to support entrepreneurs who are starting out. Japanese companies have a very difficult environment to deal with. So I talked about not having enough people. Also, the way technology is changing rapidly, how do they keep pace and deal with it? Globalization in its original form may undergo some change. How do they deal with that? There are a whole bunch of stuff. But I think the primary among that is the following. If everything is going to become a quote-unquote an on-demand service, I don't want to buy a car, I just want to do a car share, or I want to do a Uber or what have you. And these are fundamental shifts in the industry model. And these have deep implications for the Japanese industry in general. And Japan, I am sure, they have gone through so many transformations, they will deal with this also. But one luxury they don't have to deal is the people capacity, the intellectual capacity in absolute numbers. And that's where Japan has to really figure out how to partner or work with some strategic, partners from a larger scheme of things. And I think India can be. So here is my theory. If everything is going to get, over a period of time, get driven by data, Japan alone as a country does not have sufficient data to build algorithms, to test algorithms, AI, this self-learning system, da-di-da-di-da. China is way ahead in this game right now. America is way ahead, but these two countries will do what they want to do for themselves. India has right now a very unique combination of capacity, capability, and large sets of data. How do you strategically engage with each other? This is not, I'm not saying one small company here, one big company here, not that. Right? So for example, can Japan and India work together and take something like the UPI infrastructure to rest of the world? Right? Can Japan and India work together and work on a Aadhaar solution for the rest of the world? Can Japan and India work together, create new standards for how do you deal with data, security, consent? These are all very complex questions, right? And there is no standard today which is universally accepted. Can we create that standard? Japan alone can't create the standard because this market is not big enough to drive a standard. India cannot create its own standard because India does not have enough influence elsewhere to drive that standard. But India has got the scale which will automatically can be called as a default standard. So I think this requires some serious dialogue between leaderships of the two countries and the two business group, leaderships, to see how do I take advantage of this.
Yeah.
So I'm a very big proponent of this theory, that Japan should look at India to see how do I drive next generation standards.
Right.
Correct? And India should look at Japan as a way where industrial strength services and products can be delivered. Because if you pass this test, you will pass any other test. That's I'm hoping that it will happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's
So that's the other thing that keeps me busy. So I help a whole bunch of
That's really great.
initiatives
Yes.
trying to bring the two countries together. I really think that I used the word critical mass of knowledge earlier. I think it is great that you folks are trying to capture it systematically and disseminate it over a digital medium. I think that's fantastic. I think this is a great service as a voluntary service that you folks are doing. I think it's fantastic.